I think technology, because code is being all mostly generated by AI, the value of pure source code is going to zero.
Hey there. So today we're talking about building AI native companies and looking at the news. Did you see that Jack Dorsey launched and announced this new product called Buzz, which is a kind of AI native take on Slack or Slack replacement? Yeah, what were your reactions, Rahul? What'd you think of the product?
It's better than PewDiePie's agent system. I think it's going to have a little bit more longevity. So first of all, yes, thank you for putting something out there that may have longevity. This channel and AI talking in channels, it's for 2 or 3 years, I've been asking, why haven't we had this? Like, I don't understand. What's so difficult about like just adding people to chat threads or having chat threads inside where people are already talking? So I'm really happy that it's out there and more people can see the need for it. It also looks kind of cool. It looks pretty decent.
Yeah, it does. And I was really excited about the idea that this product reimagines Slack, but with AI agents as kind of first-class citizens with them, kind of sitting side by side with you, working beside you. And I also found, and maybe this is part of Dorsey's background, but the focus on kind of cryptographic signing of who's done what and having some history about how work has been done was super interesting. But yeah, I wonder if the line is too blurred between that and Slack itself and, kind of being able to work within Slack agents directly. What do you see as the advantages for having like a more native platform for this?
First of all, both Slack is a SaaS product. You have ChatGPT. ChatGPT has chat also now where you can invite people. It's a SaaS product. And with Buzz, it's open source. So you can run it on your own infrastructure and then connect different agents together. And then you can invite people there. So that's number one thing I look at it as. I'm an open source guy. So I first of all, I'm like excited because it's open source. But second of all, have been trying to handle this challenge of how do you get people and agents working together. So I think from the get-go, being open source gives you the ability to experiment differently. If you were just using ChatGPT or if you were just using Claude in Teams or Slack or whatever, this can open up your world to using potentially other models, other agents. So I like how it just levels the playing field for all different agents to be able to communicate.
Yeah, I love that too. And I also find it really exciting, not just that Buzz is like a fully open source, potentially locally runnable or on your own hardware type of solution, and we'll get into this as we talk about some of the other stories from this week, but a lot of these new emerging AI native building tools are open source. There seems to be an orientation towards that. Do you think this is like a durable trend? And what does it say about the era we're in, that we're seeing a lot of very powerful tools emerge as free and open source software?
Yeah, like Buzz, I think looking at just reading the source code and looking at the GitHub, I realize it's made well because it's made by people that care about their craft. I think technology, because code is being all mostly generated by AI, the value of pure source code is going to zero. And it's really about the people that think about it, the people that design it, that architect it. And so the future is, I believe, people making things and showing it off as saying, this is the best practice way of doing it. Here it is. Here you go. And you want to make your own, go ahead. You can fork it, you can run it, but maybe that's not your business. Maybe you don't want to necessarily maintain the source code. Let Buzz or what is it, Block XYZ maintain the source code. And if I like it enough, I'll just pay for it if they have a hosted version of it, right? So I think the future is more open source. People are consuming open source in places where they don't even understand that it's open source behind the scenes.
I really think this is an interesting trend to watch around, and I think you said it so well, this idea that like there's nothing sacred about your source code anymore. A lot of it can just be regenerated with the same tools that other people are using to build their source code. And so this thing that was once this like prized treasure of the company and heavily protected and thought of as this investment of years of work and engineering effort now has suddenly maybe overnight gone to being like not that valuable itself. And so it does seem to suggest that it sort of draws to the conclusion naturally that open source is kind of how you have to release software. And you have to find a way to add value and be worth looking at and working with and paying for the hosted version, maybe, or whatever that is, in a world in which, yeah, anyone can regenerate this code. And you just have a small level of expertise that lets you be the maybe leading product offering. One thing that I thought was interesting about the kind of technical architecture of Buzz, and it touches a lot of other discussions when we think about this question of memory and knowledge, is that at the core of Buzz is this very cool concept of the log, of the history of everything that's happened. We see this idea of one event log in this Buzz
Mhm.
product.
Mhm.
And the idea is to be able to compile everything that's happened in the history of this work project or this company that you're working on within Buzz, and then be able to derive knowledge out of that. And I think this touches on different approaches people are taking to knowledge. I worry a little bit about this approach to knowledge because if you're recomputing the answer to a question over the full history of everything that's happened in this shared workspace, you could actually get different answers at different times that could mutate over time. And it seems like this idea of pure memory alone as log is not enough to really establish true knowledge or what is authoritative as an answer to a question. I know you spend a lot of your time thinking about knowledge and memory. How do you think this shows up in this product? And yeah, what do
Yeah.
you think about the Buzz approach here?
The first thing when I looked at it, I did notice that it was this kind of like shared memory, right? Technically, that's what it is. But it did not seem to me, and by the way, in the data world, which is what I was, data and AI world, I've been in for about 10 years now, there are these materializations of data. And a materialization or materialized view of data means that you're trying to do some calculation. And to do the calculation to join these data sets together, it would be too expensive to do it on real time. So you materialize it. And so I look at memory as your time series data coming in, and I look at knowledge as the materialization of that data, right? The materialization, the thinking, the collapsing of ideas. That's what we do as human beings. We have a lot of a stream of events coming in, signals every day. We sleep, we wake up. Hopefully, we've learned something. But what is that learning? The learning isn't the whole memory. The learning is some specific facts or some specific experiences that we can build upon.
Mhm.
So I feel like maybe by the next release they may do something better, but there are other systems, other open source systems that I feel like have been cracking the knowledge problem. And then there are even yet other memory projects out there. They're not necessarily connected with the user interface. They're more for developers. But the memory and knowledge dichotomy has been around in the open source world for a while. I've seen different projects kind of tackle these two things separately.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how this emerges, especially as people work in these systems and generate all the more memories, and you come to a problem of computing all of that. And it mirrors, as you say, some developments that happened in like the big data world back in the day, and maybe how solutions came to that. One other thought I'll throw out there, which is while I think it's exciting to see someone really imagine what working alongside agents could look like, is ultimately I'm horrified by the idea that it's like heavily chat based. I'm interested in how we like quiet all of the ping ponging and chat back and forth and questions. And I wonder if there are approaches that leverage agents and allow you to kind of step out of the constant flow of conversation while still getting work done. But then again, chat has proven to be a pretty durable modality of interacting and working. So maybe that is how people want to work with agents.
Yeah, I think it's natural for folks that are in the Slack world. And I wonder if Slack had not been popular, if
Yeah,
ChatGPT would have been popular,
great
right?
point.
I just wonder because Slack brought IRC chat to everybody and everybody got on that bandwagon. So if Slack hadn't come out, would we be using AI via email? I don't know.
Sure.
So I think people are just currently used to using Slack. And when Slack first came out, the way it was advertised to me was, oh, you can connect all your stuff together and find stuff in there. That was the first thing somebody told me about it. And I was like, no, this is a
Mhm.
chat room. And yeah, I can connect other apps to it, right? But immediately, most people's use of Slack was this is the central place to put stuff.
Yep.
I'm just drag my files in there and I'm able to have access to it. And I don't have to think about it anymore. So I think chat's going to be around for a while. And I know you're not too wild about it, but
Break my heart.
I,
I think you're right, though.
it's just one of those things. It's an infrastructure now. It's like people are used to it. But I think the majority of things are going to go towards eventually designs, like how we make things in lovable. We make a spec and we enter and it makes it for us. And then we tweak it a little bit here and there. Or Claude Code, we'll write some sort of like spec document and then have it generate the app. So for some type of work, it does not have to be chat, but it still has to have memory and it still has to have knowledge. Many people will probably still use chat. They will still need memory and they will still need knowledge. So there's a common challenge of having good memory and good knowledge for various use cases, I think.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how this space evolves. And while I may not get my dream of killing chat, one development that I am excited about is the movement towards plain text flat files as the kind of core infrastructure for a lot of these new AI-based tools, whether they're chat-based, knowledge-based, memory-based. And, I think one way I've heard people describe this is in the same way that code previously was thought of as these instructions, a special type of text that could allow you to operate something at scale, do something before that you couldn't, because a machine could read that code and then do something with it in a repeatable fashion. Now, plain text is becoming that because LLMs can read plain text as instructions as well. And so this changes how we think about documentation. Documentation is code, a memo is code, a brief is code, a standards document becomes code. And
Yeah.
so we're now seeing a number of projects standardize on these flat files, whether it's Markdown, JSON, YAML, maybe a few other file formats. And one of the leading efforts in the space, which is interesting to watch, although still early, is Google's open knowledge format, which describes kind of a plain text based approach with some front matter that sort of like types the document and tells you what it's for as the machine readable format for knowledge. And we can go through some of the projects. There's been a lot in this space that have come together, but just curious what you think about this development and yeah, where your head is about it.
Yeah. So files are, it's funny, everybody's thinking about it now, but I've been hitting this challenge since last year when we were trying to make agents for financial processes and we have to deal with SEC filings as PDF documents and Excel files, which are the financial models are in the Excel file. And the challenge was, how do you extract knowledge and store it in a way to then be used for other purposes? And it was Markdown, it was JSON, it was YAML, it was just Flash files that a human could read, but the AI could also read because in agents they read text.
Yep.
And so having a standard, and then few people are adopting this knowledge format standard. I think it's more important that people do it rather than, oh, I'm using the standard, because the AI is pretty decent. As you could just tell the AI, store my knowledge in this folder, organize it for me. It does a pretty good job. It may not have all the conventions to make it optimal, but it does it for you, right? So I feel it's a great improvement. I wish more people use the standard, but I hope more people just use the method, period.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, I do think it's interesting that there are some efforts now to standardize this. But to your point, the way the standard operates, it's pretty loose and flexible in terms of it's just a document with some front matter on top of it. And I believe for the OKF standard put out by Google, actually type is the only required field.
Mhm.
So it's a standard with one single requirement that you say type and you describe the type of the document. There are some sort of suggestions for what type could be and how this could be used to consume things. But in the AI LLM driven world, there is a lot of flexibility around this and how you structure it.
You can do knowledge management with files on your computer by
Mhm.
yourself, but it really brings the magnification of that when you share it with other people. I think that's the best thing about the format, is when you have a format, you can share it with other people.
Yeah, and I think it follows this pattern we've seen in other technology developments and in computer science and engineering, this pattern of encapsulation, which makes me think of databases, right? Like there was a time where we didn't really use databases within software, and data was intermingled between your code, your representation. And what that meant was it was kind of like stuck in whatever application you were using to read the memory, to read the data. And what we realized is if we extracted that and created a home for it, the database, then lots of different users could write and read from it. We could present it and format it in very different ways in different contexts. You could have a mobile app that shows the data in one way, a website that shows the data in another way. And this just became the way to build applications. And so it seems like this is just an evolution or the next stage of that. In an LLM-based world, what does encapsulation of knowledge now mean? Because we're no longer necessarily working with data as much as knowledge. And so, these are concepts for doing that. But in the same way that a database could actually be quite simple, SQLite is just flat files, for instance,
Yeah.
you can have these advanced wiki systems, or you can just do what some people are using, Obsidian pages, Notion pages, or your own flat files that you can read yourself on your local. So it seems like there's a lot of approaches here, but what's important is the pattern of encapsulation and the pattern of creating a home for your memory, your knowledge.
Yeah, it's like the Bill Gates quote, you take a bad process and you add technology to it, you're going to make it worse, right? If you take a good process and you add technology to it, it's going to make it better. So if you organize knowledge in a good way, every AI that talks to it will be more effective. Every person using the AI, using that, whatever you've done, if you organize it well, it will do it in a better way because the AI can find the answer quicker, it'll be more efficient, and it'll be fact if there's multiple people using it. And the power of these documents is you can go so far with just a document, right? I think I'm talking earlier that it's kind of like code. You're basically saying this is what needs to be done, and the AI just does it.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you're right. It can be a force multiplier when done well. And that's why I'm kind of excited to see people experimenting with different ways to structure this type of knowledge. And not that it needs to be much more than your own homegrown system of flat files, and that can work. But then you also have some cool projects where people are kind of experimenting with that. One that showed up this week for me is Vault LD, which is a pretty direct implementation of this idea of an LLM wiki and has a lot of opinions about where different data goes, how's it structured, how it's spec'd. And to your point, I think when you build an approach, a system, a methodology, an ontology for this kind of knowledge work, then whatever agents you're using or whatever your AI infrastructure is can be leveraged all the more effectively and also efficiently in terms of token efficiency versus having to compact a whole year of company history to answer a single question.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming back to what, when we were looking at Buzz, yeah, technically it does store everything.
Yeah.
And even if you put it into a quote vector database where you could find the relevant entries, knowledge would be potentially something you would say is true and eternal. Here's the most important stuff that needs to be stored. These are facts that can't be forgotten, regardless of whether you found it or not. Right.
Yep.
That's a type of knowledge. And the other type of knowledge is if we were to look at all of this and compact it, what would it look like? And you showed Vault LD, and it stores data in an RDF graph, basically. And there's so many cool things that happen when you put things in a graph, which is you can traverse it and get facts without necessarily knowing the full picture. And that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful for some people to understand that are less familiar with these concepts that a graph doesn't have to be thought of as anything all that mysterious. It can just be flat files that point at each other and describe the relationship between those files. So an agent can read this and say, oh, this is the feature that we implemented, but the background requirements document is linked over here. Let me go grab that. And that already becomes a kind of knowledge graph, a very simplified one. But it allows you to then start to think of these flat file documents, your source of truth, and start relating them to one another and describing that. And that becomes very powerful. And I think why people should be excited about this is it means that you can start to really structure your work, your own kind of personal brain, your company brain, and you can get more repeatable, consistent, and reliable output out of agents when you put them in this kind of structured context around how they should think about their work, what their voice should be, what the success criteria is. And that allows you to step away from prompting, which I've come to think of as almost like middle management of just like constantly checking it, like micromanaging your AI employee. And you can get away from that into like a more autonomous operation of a company when you get this stuff right. And that is why I think it's so exciting, and what I think so exciting about like the idea of an AI native company.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to then talk about how you can baby step into becoming more AI native. These documents, these markdown files, Claude recently, and then everybody's kind of adopted it, this idea of a skill, right?
Yeah.
And a skill is not a knowledge base and it's not a knowledge graph, but a good skill can have the main instructions that have reference documents that have some depth to them. And so skill can be very full-fledged from in terms of a knowledge perspective. And these runners, whenever we're using Claude Code or Hermes Agent, they first will look at the skill and they will look at the relevant areas that it may have to go. And then it will go look at the referred document. So anybody that's using skills that has multiple files in them, you're using a knowledge graph of sorts already. And if you're not using skills, you should be.
Yeah.
Uh, what is your experience? What are some skills that you use to be more AI native, to have some repetitive or quality outcomes that come on a repetitive basis? What kind of skills do you use?
Yeah, there are two that come to mind that I'm really excited about. One is this idea of a handoff skill, or we have our own version, which we call checkpoint, but it's from Matt Pocock's skill sets, and he kind of evangelized the concept. And the idea is, as I'm working with an agent, I might want to kind of create a save point or distill part of that conversation so that I can move it into another thread. And it is important to think about these agent works as kind of their own thread because they contain their own context and history. So if I'm working on a marketing initiative in one place, but I'm writing the code of a feature in another place, then I kind of want to create some separation and some focus for that work, just like humans benefiting from focusing on one task at hand in relevant context. But let's say I finish the feature and now I'm like, oh, I want to actually market this. I can ask the agent to distill out the parts that are market relevant, not the architecture, not the code, that doesn't matter, but just the
Mhm.
marketing pieces, and then merge it into this other thread where I'm doing my marketing work. And that becomes a very powerful way to coordinate and orchestrate work across different threads and keep ideas that emerge in threads in the place that they belong or move them around. What about you? What are some of your skills?
Yeah, so Matt has I don't know, 100,000 skills. I think he has like 4,000. How many he has? He has 100,000 people on YouTube watching him, so he knows something about this, right? And I found a couple of GTD, David Allen's Getting Things Done book. I tried doing GTD with ChatGPT early. It didn't have the context to do it right. But recently I tried a few and I've ended up making a kind of my own iteration of the GTD set of plugins, and it just helps me capture things. It's not the skill itself, the GTD skill itself, that actually makes it work. It's the folders for my projects and my project MD files with some front matter. So it comes back to file
Not,
format,
yeah,
organization, and then skills are just like skills are the software, but your folder structure and your files are your database.
totally. Yep. That's a great way to put it.
But it's
Uh,
more than that, right? Like you can have instructions on how to do stuff in the files themselves too. But I got into skills with GTD because I was like, there has to be a better way of doing it, right?
Now I could just get your skill and then make my agents as good at GTD as you are. And if I structure my work the right way, if I structure my knowledge the right way, then I kind of get that behavior for free. And I think if you're building a company, even a small company, that's kind of exciting to think that you can distribute as you would a computer, a mode of working even. And then you as an organization can evolve that to get ever better at that in a way that reflects more a software methodology rather than, human organization design. And that becomes quite powerful, I think.
Yeah, I see documents being licensed on an hourly or a monthly basis. May not be next year, but I just see that because you think about it, we've been doing it with software and source code. And we're talking about how these markdown files are basically source code.
Yes.
And to be able to say, I'm going to lease Michael's skills from his company's knowledge base, and I'm going to lease Rahul's skills for his productivity stuff. And then I'm going to just use the free ones that are available to talk to my Todoist.
Yep.
I don't use Todoist anymore, but let's say I want to switch using from Todoist to using things or to
Yep.
use Remember the Milk again. I don't know. Like, you remember that tool?
Yeah.
So AI allows me to do that, compose abilities. And I think that skills and knowledge bases are going to be the new IP. And yeah, we have to open source stuff and show people, but I feel like specialized knowledge, meaning skills and knowledge bases, and specialized data, training data, just masses of data, whatever it is, documents or data. That's what's going to make a company special or a person special, because everybody has access to all this stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that raises a really interesting question, maybe for a subsequent discussion, is like, yeah, what even is valuable today? And I think that's something everyone's grappling with. It's something I'm certainly thinking of. To close on some quick hits of developments that are showing up that I think are interesting, and is very much at the heart of this idea of AI native companies, is this question of running things in a more fully autonomous way. So something that really caught my eye was Lyzr, the startup, did its whole fundraise kind of just using its autonomous AI agents, and that's a big part of their product. But they were able to raise their $100 million Series B in this fully autonomous way, and that's pretty crazy to think about. Like that you would entrust something that's regarded as usually a very sensitive process that requires a certain kind of skill and acumen out just to a fleet of AI agents. And this also makes me think of this project that kind of went viral this week called Auto-Company, which tries to give you a whole company out of the box with a bunch of engineers and different personalities. Jeff Bezos as your CEO, DHH as one of your engineers, and kind of gets you up and running on a whole company out.
Why?
Well,
Why?
yeah, this may need a like plug-in architecture so you could pick who you want to run your company. But I guess it raises the question, like, how far are we going to go in letting agents kind of autonomously run important business processes or the business ourselves for us? And I'm curious, yeah, like how far you've gone in trusting an AI agent to operate autonomously on business critical things. Like, where are you in levels of trust, and what's the highest stake thing you would give an AI agent today?
Sure. So professionally, we have built agent suites, agent fleets for a couple of different industries. One is in finance, specifically fundamental analysis of public companies in emerging markets. And we have to trust it a lot to be able to do that. And so that's one. Another is in lending and origination. You have to trust it a lot. You have to give it a lot of good facts. You have to verify facts. So I'm 100% on board with letting the AI make these decisions. And that's because I've seen it do a pretty good job. It gets 95% there, and then the human has to look at it and check it out. Now, Fable, these models that are out there now, they're really good. You take the trust that I had with just Opus or Sonnet, and then you add Fable, then I'm done. I don't have to really worry about it.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily think I'm trusting the AI, I'm trusting the knowledge. I'm like
Yeah.
looking at that document and saying, what does it actually say? Because if I can read it, I can trust it.
Raul, it's been an awesome conversation. Thanks for chatting this week about what's going on in AI native company building.